Honors 10, today is our last day in the clauses unit, probably the hardest day. Today our goal is to look at all the different types of sentences that are out there and use our knowledge of clauses and conjunctions to identify the type of sentence. There are 4 different types of sentences. The first is a simple sentence. A simple sentence is made up of just one independent clause. It is one sentence. Now, it can have a compound verb or a compound subject, but it is still one clause. The second type of clause is a compound sentence. A compound sentence is 2 independent clauses joined together. So that joining happens either with your fanboys, or a semicolon, or a conjunctive adverb, a semicolon and then like a transition word like however or moreover and a comma. So you'll have 2 complete sentences joined together. That's a compound sentence. The third sentence is a complex sentence. Any sentence that has a subordinate clause is complex, even if it has just a noun clause. Typically, the definition of a complex sentence is 1 subordinate clause and 1 independent clause. But in the case of a noun clause, your independent clause isn't necessarily independent without that noun clause. But as long as you have 1 subordinate clause, your sentence is at least complex. The last type of sentence structure is compound complex. That means it has both the elements of a compound sentence, 2 independent clauses joined by a fanboy or semicolon, and the element of a complex sentence, a subordinate clause. So a compound complex sentence has 2 independent clauses and at least 1 subordinate clause. Now I have a fancy procedure that'll help you figure out how to identify the sentence structure. I want us to take a look at that first, and then we'll look at some examples together, okay?
I'd like you to write this procedure down in your notes. This is the steps I want you to follow as you're trying to figure out your sentence's structure. The first thing I want you to do is look for a fanboys or a semicolon. If that fanboy joins 2 complete sentences and is not just making a list, that means your sentence is at least compound, but it might be compound and complex. So the second step is to look for a subordinate clause. If there's a subordinate clause, that means your sentence is at least complex. Number 3, you can use this chart if you can't remember what makes up the given sentence types. So if you have a fanboys, you'd either have a compound complex or just a compound, depending on if you have a subordinate clause or not. If you don't have a fanboys, it could be either complex or simple. If you have a subordinate clause, it's either compound complex or complex. If you don't have a subordinate clause, it's either compound or simple. You use this chart just like the chart that you use in science class. All right, when I take a look at sentence structure, I want to first look for any fanboys or any semicolons in a sentence. So in sentence 1, I see a semicolon. Any fanboys or semicolon means that the sentence is at least compound, but then I still have to look for subordinate clauses. I actually see a few here. I see who are similar to themselves and that people prefer to be with others. Even if I just had 1, that's all it takes to make the sentence complex. So since I have both, this sentence is compound complex. In number 2, look for fanboys. I don't see anything. On the other hand is a prep phrase, and phrases don't affect my sentence structure. So there's no fanboys, no semicolon. Now I need to look for subordinate clauses. I see that opposites attract. All it takes is 1. This sentence is complex. In number 3, I need to look for fanboys or semicolons. I see neither. Now I need to look for subordinate clauses. I see a lot of prepositions about the influence of personality and on relationships. Those are all phrases, so don't let those confuse you. Nope, I have nothing else left. So this is a simple sentence. Lastly, I see a comma fanboy right here. That means it's at least compound. Now I need to look for subordinate conjunctions or clauses. There are none in this sentence, so this sentence is just compound. Here's your optional practice. Try to identify the sentence structure of these 4 sentences. All right, let's see how well you did. For number 1, I see a lot of commas on December 7th, 1941, but that is a prepositional phrase. It can't affect your sentence. I see a semicolon. That makes it compound. Do I see a subordinate clause? No. So number 1 is just compound. Number 2, no fanboys, no subordinating conjunctions. Simple. Number 3, I see a subordinate clause which lasted 4 years. That makes it at least complex. I do not see any fanboys or a semicolon, so that one's just complex. And number 2, I see a fanboy, comma, and I see a subordinate clause, which was the largest seaborne invasion in history. So this one is both compound and complex.